Today is Tuesday, December 16th, 2025. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. There's an arrest in Rob Reiner's shocking death. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating on your favorite podcast platform of choice if you haven't done so already. We'd appreciate it. You can email us as well. Our email address is quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. We love hearing from you, as we're also glad you're with us each and every weekday, bright and early, getting through the news of the day as we do every weekday. And with me today, CBN's Billy Hallowell, Trey Goins-Phillips. On the Focus story, Dana Perino recently celebrated a holiday in a pretty unique way.
Yes, we're going to get into that. She was over in Africa serving people in need. A pretty powerful story about mercy ships. So we'll get into all that today.
We'll hear about that mission coming up in just a few minutes. Also on the main thing, actress Jenny McCarthy says she fully surrendered to God after Charlie Kirk's death. Billy and Raj break it all down. Coming up in just a few minutes on the main thing. And let me tell you about our sponsors for this podcast. Christian Solidarity International, CSI, great ministry. They are on the ground helping persecuted Christians in places like Nigeria, as we talked about with Hassan John. Interviews on YouTube now. You can check that out. Incredible. He's got a bounty on his head. This is a pastor and a journalist who's from Nigeria, based in the UK now, but he frequently goes back to Nigeria and has a bounty on his head from Boko Haram. And pretty much just for essentially being a Christian pastor there. This is the dangers that pastors and Christians face in places like Nigeria. It's risking your life just to profess your faith in Christ in an area like that. And so if you want to help those people, go beyond the praying, which is the most effective form of help we can do. But if you want to do more, in addition to that, go ahead to csi-usa.org. And you can contribute there, and you can help to the great work they're doing on the ground that CSI is doing to help people in need. They're strengthening and encouraging pastors. They bring basic supplies like food and safe shelter, medical care, and things like that, and rebuilding villages that have been torn down or burned, which often happens in some of these areas. So if God's put it on your heart, go ahead, come alongside CSI. And you can go to csi-usa.org to do that. That's csi-usa.org. And we're going to go to the news now in 90 seconds. And a horrifying tragedy has unfolded in Hollywood. Legendary director Rob Reiner and his wife, Michele, were found brutally stabbed to death inside their Los Angeles home. Police say the suspect is their own son, Nick Reiner, who has now been charged with 2 counts of murder and is being held on $4 million bail. He's 32 years old. Investigators say the couple's daughter was the one who found them and told officers a family member should be considered dangerous before police had even arrived. Authorities believe the killings followed a heated argument, with both victims suffering fatal knife wounds. Discovered on Sunday afternoon, Nick Reiner has had a long and public history of drug addiction and instability, including multiple rehab stints and periods of homelessness. The case has sent a shockwave through Hollywood, bringing a brutal and tragic end to the life of the filmmaker behind The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, and A Few Good Men, among others, and his wife as well. And that is one of the big stories today. You can check out more stories over at cbnnews.com. And guys, this is obviously a horrible, horrible tragedy. President Trump's getting a little bit of grief. Yesterday, he posted really a statement that I feel like is getting criticized from both sides of the aisle, kind of criticizing Rob Reiner for being for having Trump derangement syndrome, and essentially saying that's what caused his death, was making people angry for being anti-Trump. And while that's true that Rob Reiner was certainly anti-Trump and constantly was tweeting about it and all of that other stuff, it just seemed kind of not in good taste here to do that in the midst of this rising violence that we're seeing in this country. And this is obviously a domestic thing. It looks like potentially with the alleged killer potentially being the son. That's what police are zeroing in on right now. Obviously, we'll wait and see what comes out, but all signs are pointing to that right now at this moment. And it's just a terrible tragedy. You just wonder what's going on in a family that it gets to that point where somebody wants to commit violence. And it's just really sad all around.
It's heartbreaking on every level. I think that our politics are so... I'm trying to find the right words because I don't want to go too far with it. Our politics are so grotesque that we've moved to a place where we just have no regard for other human beings or their feelings or what's right. And when somebody is murdered, or dead in general, they've died, the idea that we would post something like this, but I think the scary thing is we're all really comfortable with it. A lot of us are, not all of us, but enough of us
as a culture, for sure.
As a culture, to not be disturbed by it, to not pull ourselves back and say, wait a minute, what's the right thing to do? And I think we know what the right thing to do is. And this is where the scriptures, when Jesus says their hearts will grow cold, I'm not saying that anybody in particular, their heart is cold. I'm saying as a culture, collectively, we are willing to tolerate some pretty frigid behavior, and we've got to call it out. And people are, as you said, many people are, and say, hey, this isn't okay. And hopefully people can apologize and course correct.
Yeah, obviously I agree with everything both of you just said about the story being so just heartbreaking, devastating on every level, especially considering that there's a good likelihood that this was a familial dispute, that the son was in, one of Rob Reiner's sons was potentially in some way involved. I think that just obviously adds a layer of just heartbreak to this whole situation, because regardless of somebody's politics, how cruel they are and what they say about another politician or what they think about religion, all of that stuff, you set that aside and say, well, a human being still has innate value, is still made in the image of God, and they have the dignity of not having their life taken from them. So yeah, I think this is a heinous story all the way around. As far as comments from President Trump, I completely obviously understand where the criticisms are coming from, but I think it goes to just this social media obsessed world that we live in, and Trump is just as much a victim of it as anybody else. It's like I have phone will tweet is like the world that we live in right now. It's like you don't have to say anything at all. I grew up with my parents telling my siblings and I all the time, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And I think that's a rule that we don't follow anymore. It's a biblical rule about speaking truth and speaking life. And yeah, I think that was an instance of, unfortunately, the president stooping pretty low in the way that he communicated. I think it's fair to say that most people who are aware of what he wrote would say he probably should not have said that. So anyway, I just, as Christians, want to also be prayerful for the Reiner family, and hopefully the Lord will use that to expose himself to them.
Yeah, somehow.
Family members who are remaining.
Yeah, somehow, some way. Hopefully God puts the right people in the rest of the family's lives here at the right time. Because it's a sad situation, and it's unfortunate that we're having to, sort of report on so many of these types of situations. People, their love grows cold. Like you said, the social media phenomenon definitely contributes to people not viewing each other as humans first. It's just some fodder for criticism and yelling at, and it's led us to a very, very destructive place right now. And so we're praying that all turns around, hopefully, in the future. All right, we are going to go to the focus story now. And as we alluded to at the top here, Dana Perino recently had a really cool missions trip here, essentially. And she does this like every year around the holidays. So tell me about this.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting. She goes overseas. This year she was just outside of Africa with mercy ships. And, this is really an interesting opportunity to volunteer her time. She takes, obviously, some people with Fox News with her, and she documents the time aboard mercy ships and really giving up her holiday. Her husband goes with her, and they basically serve people there. And so she reflected on some of that with us, talking about obviously the fact she gave her own holiday up. As you said, Dan, she does this very often to just be with people who are in desperate need and people who don't have access to medical care. And this is something that she actually started. It kind of started as a request from former President George W. Bush and former First Lady Laura Bush. They had asked her to interview them for an event that involved mercy ships, and it was this capital campaign years ago. And she went to it. She knew nothing about mercy ships and learned quite a bit about the organization, and that I think really put in her a passion to serve other people and help out. Obviously she's not a doctor or a surgeon, but there's plenty of other things you can do on the ship there to help out. And so she spent her holiday doing just that.
All right. So tell me about these mercy ships. What are they? What is the mission? What are they doing?
Yeah, so they're literal hospital ships that go around countries where there isn't medical care, and they are fully surgically equipped. And so there's surgeons, doctors, and all those surgeons and doctors will come and volunteer their time. And you're talking about countries where there's no access. Here, if we need to have surgery or we need medicine, we can go to the pharmacy or go to a doctor and have surgery. Like where Mercy Ships is going, parts of Africa and other locations, those things do not exist. It was started by this couple, Don and Dion Stevens. They're from Texas, and it was really this Jesus-based mission. And this was started decades ago of creating these surgical ships to make sure that there was a gap that was filled. And so Perino is just one of the people who loves to provide attention to this. Not only does she volunteer her time, she then goes and gets Fox to do a lot of promotion. And she goes on like ours to talk about it to help bring in more money. She said every cent is accounted for and goes towards serving people who don't have it. I think one of the stats she shared, she said, I think we have one surgeon for every 10,000 people here in America, but there's one surgeon for every 2 million people, some other places in the world. And so it just becomes life or death. And so these ships are traveling hospitals that, again, are filled with volunteers, mostly Americans and people from around the world, but America has the highest share. And she said the surgeons will come for a week or 2 weeks. Some of them will stay longer. And this is something she's gone to all different countries to volunteer her time for.
And what did she say about faith? What did she say about Jesus? Does she connect all that?
Yeah, it was interesting. She said she feels really privileged to be able to work in a place where she's able to share her faith. She said she's always like, people will come up to her and say, thank you for being so open about God. And that's one of the reasons she does this, her faith. She grew up going to church with parents who helped refugees and did all these active things, a continuation of that for her. But when it comes to Jesus, she said, if she remembered Jesus saying, you're going to be challenged in this way, meaning it'll be difficult for you to talk about your faith sometimes, that when you share, you might face persecution. And she said in a small way, if she can add to people's confidence to speak out about God's love and why she's doing what she's doing, she's like, that's really an amazing thing about being able to work where she does, that she can be open about that, not taking for granted the fact many people around the world are persecuted and cannot share their faith in the way that she's able to. So not only physically providing for the needs of people, but inspiring people to talk about their faith and why they're acting the way that they do. And so that's one of the benefits she said comes from being able to talk about mercy ships and point people's attention, because a lot of people, again, are in need of this medical care. And there's literally an organization going around on these big ships providing it for people.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we take many, many things for granted here in America. Other first world countries have the same things that they take for granted. With all the flaws that our healthcare system does have, it's not even close to what some of these other countries deal with. I mean, I still can recall my time in Haiti and seeing people that were just in need of, they'd get a cut, right? Like just a basic cut, like kid out playing or something like that. And they didn't even have easy access to running water to like clean these cuts out. So they get infected, and just a random cut that would be nothing here turns into these big, massive wounds on these kids' bodies. And so when I was there, I was watching someone go around, and that's pretty much all she did all day, with just basic wound care kits and just helping people. And so that was just one little glimpse of what some of these countries are dealing with. You can imagine bigger issues that are going on. And so the fact that somebody has created this whole thing to go around to address that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think there's something incredible and just tangible about meeting somebody's physical needs and then sharing the hope of the gospel with them, because I think it falls flat when we're like, well, it's like giving a server a tract but no tip. Like after you go to a restaurant,
Right.
like,
Then
okay,
you hop back into the
pretty
SUV.
tacky because
Have a great
yeah,
day.
right. It's like you shared the gospel with them, but you didn't even give them any money, like the money that they live on. So anyway, my point is, yeah, I think it's great to meet somebody's physical need because that creates a level of trust, right? I'm meeting this physical need for you because I see that it's urgent and needs to be addressed now. And then I'm going to tell you why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because of the love of Jesus. So I think that's awesome and great to see somebody like Dana Perino, who has a lot of clout, knows a lot of people, obviously, former press secretary, Fox News anchor. Cool to see somebody with her platform using her time for such a great cause.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 100%. I like that point because a pastor of mine from the past used to talk about that. Like whenever they would do something to help someone, they would purposely say, all right, I got to make sure I'm helping this person first in some way. And then when you share the gospel after you do it, it's like you have credibility to it and there's weight to it. Then, like you said, just potentially somebody in need and you just give them the word and then leave. You know, that's good too. I mean, like we want to share the word, but like it just hits even more when you have your faith in action a little bit and then share the gospel as well. It just matches up better with what the gospel is saying. Final thoughts, Billy?
It was convicting to me that she's out there doing this on Thanksgiving. The rest of us are at home, you know, eating meals, not even thinking about the fact that there are people who are suffering. So I guess it made me feel like, what can I do? What more can I do?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, good story there. Glad to, and you can see more about that. You had an interview with Dana, which is a great interview, and it's on the CBN News YouTube channel. If you want to check that out, go over to our CBN News YouTube channel and take a look at that. Appreciate that, Billy. And we're going to go to the main thing now. And actress Jenny McCarthy said she's fully surrendered to God after Charlie Kirk's death, clearly deeply moved. And Billy and Raj break down those comments and more on today's main thing.
Actress Jenny McCarthy says that she has fully surrendered her life to God after Charlie Kirk's death. She also describes herself as a conservative, making these comments in a recent interview with podcaster Alex Clark. Let's watch what she had to say.
After Charlie was murdered, you posted yourself listening and singing worship music.
When he was shot, look at how many people came closer to God, even including myself. When he passed, I completely surrendered. I am so devoted. I just want Charlie to know that he changed the world.
Raj, coming back from that, and those were the highlights. Obviously, people can go into the full episode of Alex Clark to see everything she said about worship music, about Charlie Kirk, about the impact, about being a conservative. But the most important piece here is that she fully surrendered her life to the Lord, like a lot of other people have after what happened to Charlie Kirk. What was your reaction to this?
I think that's the testimony. That's the legacy of Charlie Kirk. People are going to remember Charlie Kirk for dunking on so-and-so and this debate here and here about, you know, the value of the unborn life, or, you know, the sexual ethic that the Bible lays out, or taxes or immigration or whatever. But I think what Charlie understood at a deeply profound level is that all of these things that are unimaginably important are downstream of our relationship with Yeshua, our relationship with God. If you want to make someone have, or at least allow them the opportunity to see with clear eyes, the value of human life, the value of the fact that God created mankind in his own image, male and female, he created them. The value of a lot of these almost religious political views, I guess you could say, is that everything to get to that point is downstream. So if you want to reach the next generation, you start with the gospel. You start with, hey, you're not accidental space dust. You are intrinsically invaluable. You are more infinitely valuable, I should say, because you are created in the image of God. You have dignity, you have worth, you have importance, not because of what you've earned or because of your skin color or because of where you come from, but because you are a child of God. And it's from there. And all these like quotes about him being racist, and it's just all of these clips that are completely taken out of context. I mean, he was deeply moved by God's diversity of skin colors, of all of different nationalities and what might you have. But I think what obviously this clip shows, and a myriad of other examples, would be the reason that Charlie Kirk's, in my opinion, yes, he was a political commentator. Of course, that was his exterior. But his engine, especially towards the end, was his faith. And that is, in my opinion, why he had such an impact. And so I think if we are trying to, why can't you see this? Why can't you see that? I think there are people spiritually blind. And the most important, and it's not getting into politics, quite the contrary. The most important, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, the most important political thing that I can do to someone, to my neighbor, to my friend, is say, hey, let's see your worldview. Where is that coming from? Because if it's a hedonistic, communistic thing where it's like, it's all this fleshy, carnal here and now, well, then people don't have inherent value. And even some of these atheistic worldviews borrow so much from the biblical ethic about human life. But I think what was really that God brought in my heart was this verse from 1 Timothy. And it says, "For there is one God and one mediator between God and mankind, the man Christ Jesus, who gave himself as a ransom for all people." This is now we've been witness to at the proper time. "For this purpose, I was appointed a herald and an apostle." And here's the thing. If you have an issue with Jenny McCarthy and maybe her past, look at anyone's past. My past, the guy who wrote this story, this part of scripture, Paul. You want to talk about a past? And so to me, I don't know why, but whenever we do stories about celebrities, people are like, oh, did you know they did? Listen, you know what Paul did? You know what David did? And I'm not saying that we excuse sin, obviously, quite the contrary. I'm just saying that people can be made new. People can, that really the only way to be made new is through Jesus. And so questioning someone just because of their past or because of their celebrity upbringing, I'm like, listen, I'm gonna allow them to live out whatever God has for them, because look what God did through Paul. But I would say this is encouraging, and also it should help us focus when we're having conversations around Christmas time with family members, that, hey, beating your head against a brick wall and be like, why can't you see this issue politically? Not sure that's going to be a lot accomplished. But if you love someone and you show them the love of Yeshua, you plant seeds, you shine a light, that actually changes hearts. Because at the end of the day, the only person who can really change a heart is Jesus. And so let's be praying that more people like this keep showing up, because I really do believe Charlie Kirk changed the world for generations because of his faith in Jesus.
I think too that when we look at a situation like this and we see something so horrific happen, and we've talked about this over the last 3 months, but I think we really have to dig in on it, because the assumption is that, this horrific thing happened, we're traumatized, and all that is true. It was horrible, but yet God can take the most evil, nasty, awful, vile, horrific thing and turn it over for his good. He can take anything that we choose to do with our free will, anything that evil chooses to foist upon humanity, and he can flip that around and use it to reach people. And what you see in that interview is that Jenny McCarthy is one of the people who went all in after watching what we all saw. It had a shift in her. It didn't focus her, it seems like, on the evil. It didn't focus her on all of the negativity. It pointed her toward the truth. And I think oftentimes in our lives when difficult things are happening, and I think about this a lot, I was talking about it on another interview today, horrible things can happen. And when I think about the times I've learned the most in my life, it's been from the horrific things, the difficult things, the struggles. Not only can we learn from that, but God can take those things and turn them over for good. And so for me, watching this, and I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg of the impact that Charlie had. At one point, Jenny McCarthy said she just wants Charlie to know that he changed the world. And even if Charlie changed one person's world, bringing them to eternity, that would have been worth it. And I don't want to trivialize what happened, but there have been hundreds, if not thousands of people. In fact, we have surveys showing us that 29% of Americans reacted to Charlie Kirk's death, either politically or spiritually. Something is there. It's important we understand that, and we take that lesson into other things in our lives to know that God is always with us, no matter what happens.
All right, appreciate that conversation there. And that's going to leave us with time on the podcast today for one last thing.
We are looking at Hebrews 13:16 today. It says, "Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God."
I love that. Yeah, just always sharing with others, loving others. It's that commandment of loving God, loving others.
Amen and amen. Great spot to leave it on this edition of the Quick Start Podcast. As always, make sure you're getting on over to cbnnews.com and faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. Also, if you'd like to help persecuted Christians, go to Christian Solidarity International. That's csi-usa.org. God bless. See you back here tomorrow.